The moonlight pours down bright and clear upon the silent world, and on that very day, his entire world change. Bathed in that silvery light, a beautiful angelic figure stands before him, her voice calm yet filled with divine purpose. She tells him that there exist many spirits just like her, and pleads with him to gather the power of those spirits enough to become a great spirit user. She declares that everything must be done for the sake of opening the gate of the sky, and promises that, for that purpose, she will give him her everything, even offering to become his sword, and calls him master. Alva can only stare at her, entranced and wordless under the glow of the moon. 2 weeks earlier, chaos fills the dungeon. Slaves run through the darkness, their breath ragged and fearful cries echoing. One of them screams for help, another sobs that they do not want to die such a meaningless death. Someone else mutters that it was impossible from the slaves like them could never stand against an A-rank dungeon boss. They shout that there is no way to defeat a Cerberus. Behind them, a monstrous three-headed beast charges forward, crushing everything under its massive claws. Fire bursts from its mouths, burning through the tunnels as the slaves flee in terror. The flames lick dangerously close to one of them, who gasps that it is hopeless, that they are all going to be eaten alive. Bodies fall as they trip and stumble over the uneven ground. Another slave cries that they are all going to die. Amidst the panic, one slave with striking red hair stands his ground and charges toward the monster. The Cerberus roars, all 3 heads twisting toward him, but the red-haired boy attacks fearlessly, striking one of its faces. The monster groans in pain, and the other slaves watch in shock. Someone gasps and mutters that it's the plague god. Without hesitation, the boy slashes again, aiming at another head of the beast. Far away in a great city, 2 men stand together. One of them calls his companion's attention, pointing out that the slave explorers have actually come back alive from an A-rank dungeon. The other man seems stunned when he learns that the one who killed the dungeon boss was Alva. Shocked whispers spread. Alva, the dungeon explorer, has returned alive again, even though he was sent in weighed down with shackles strapped to his arms and legs. Elsewhere in a noble's chamber, a servant rushes in and bows, announcing that he has come to report. The lord interrupts, saying that he already knows. His face twists in fury as he curses Alva's name, shouting that even after being thrown into an A-rank dungeon as a slave weighed down and left to die, the boy still managed to survive and come back alive. Meanwhile, Alva walks through the market streets, his body tired but his eyes unwavering. Around him, the townspeople murmur with resentment. Someone spits that they need to get rid of him, and others throw tomatoes, shouting for him to die already and calling him a monster. He keeps walking as the rotten fruits splatter across his worn clothes. Inside a nearby shop, 2 men watch the scene unfold. One of them asks why everyone is booing, wondering if a man who cleared an A-rank dungeon should not be thanked instead. The other takes a sip of tea and says that he must be new around here. He explains that the Alva kid is the son of a criminal and a whore. His companion frowns and repeats in disbelief, a criminal's son. The old man nods and explains that Alva's father was once a noble of the city, but one day he suddenly changed. He turned rogue, attacking the city with his private army, wrecking everything and stealing all they could. Nobles and commoners alike suffered. It did not matter who they were. In a single night, he stripped the city bare. They tried to catch him, but by the time the army was ready, he had already vanished. Yet their hatred remained. Someone needed to take the blame, and the only one left was the child abandoned by both parents, knowing nothing. To the other nobles, a whore's child was nothing but trouble. The younger man asks in disbelief if they truly threw an innocent boy into deadly dungeons, blaming a child for the sins of his parents. The old man calmly admits that they did, saying that they are indeed awful people. But he adds that the treasures from high-level dungeons are worth a fortune, and thanks to that boy, the city prospers. Still, he confesses, the city craves blood and revenge. It is rotten to the core and wishes for the criminal's son to die horribly, torn apart by monsters. He remarks that it has been 6 years since Alva and that girl became slaves, and because of him, even others like them are thrown into dungeons. In one such dungeon, 2 slaves speak bitterly among themselves, saying that because of Alva, they keep getting sent into dangerous places. They wonder how long this hell will last. Alva only thinks quietly to himself not to worry, but they tell him not to drag them down with him. He thinks again that he will be dead soon anyway. He remembers his first fight 2 goblins. At first, he had thought they were toying with him. It was barely a winnable fight even for a 9-year-old, yet he won, though he ended up covered in wounds. Watching him suffer brought joy to the spectators outside the dungeon gates. They made sure he did not die, but they also made sure that every bit of pain and misery felt real. Those cruel days continued for 4 years. In place of his father, they tormented him, and when they were satisfied, they tried to kill him. At first, they set up fights where he would not quite die, but eventually they sent him into battles where death seemed certain. Even so, he survived again and again, clinging to life. And through that endless suffering, their cruelty bore unexpected fruit. Alva gained frightening strength. He became someone they could not easily kill. Slowly, the townsfolk's frustration grew. He now sits in his dark cell, calling out to the guard and asking where his food is. The guard replies that he heard Alva is not getting any today. Alva sighs and thinks that it has been 5 days straight without food. The magic collar around his neck prevents him from escaping anyway. He knows that he is starving and that sooner or later their schemes will kill him. He shivers, thinking that it is cold today and that the guards have only grown harsher. He admits to himself that he won't live much longer. In another trial, Alva faces a monstrous black minotaur, an ultra-rare subspecies. While other slaves tremble, he alone steps forward to fight. Those watching can hardly believe what they are seeing. Someone mutters that such insane power cannot be met with anything but speed. Alva's body moves fluidly, his strikes sharp despite the exhaustion. The monster crashes down, but the battle continues. Other slaves exclaim that he is crazy. An A-rank dungeon takes 20 elite adventurers to clear, yet he is holding his own alone. The black minotaur rises again. Alva, panting, realizes the situation is dire. He tells himself that he is managing, but barely. His starvation leaves him weak, and his weapon, unreplaced for years, is chipped and dull. Still, he cannot let his guard down. No mistakes, just keep moving with precision. Then something catches his eye, a small yellow lizard crawling across the stone floor. He frowns, thinking that yellow ones are rare, but in a place like this, it will just be crushed and die. He shakes his head and forces himself to refocus on the fight. Yet when the minotaur's paw crashes down, he finds himself shielding the tiny creature with his arm. The other slaves shout in confusion, wondering what the hell he is doing. Alva himself questions it too. Why did he just protect a worthless lizard? He tells himself to move, not to stop, to regret it later if he must. Now, right under the beast's feet, he realizes it cannot defend its leg from that position. He slashes upward, cutting through its limb, and then drives his weapon across its throat. A flood of blood bursts forth, and the minotaur's head falls away from its massive body. The slaves stand in stunned silence. Someone whispers that he actually won again against the black minotaur alone. They ask in disbelief what kind of person he is, while he is holding the yellow lizard in his hand. Back in a quiet cafe, 2 men who are discussing the unbelievable story. One says that it's still strange, and the older one asks what he means. The first man wonders aloud about Alva the noble who turned criminal, the reason he became a slave. He asks whether Alva's father, even with a private army, truly attacked a whole city and escaped the Lord's forces. The old man leans back and answers that there is a rumor that Alva's father gained a special power overnight. The younger man repeats in surprise, a special power. In that moment, the scene drifts to Alva once again. He stares quietly at the yellow lizard in his hand, remembering that moment in the dungeon. He thinks that back then, he had not known yet that meeting this little lizard would be the start of everything. Somewhere, he recalls a merchant once saying that there are legends of beings beyond human understanding, spirit users. And as he gazes at the lizard, Alva feels a strange certainty growing within him, realizing that this encounter was no coincidence. It was his destiny. In the dim, cold prison, Alva sits alone. In his hands, he holds the same yellow lizard one he saved days ago. He murmurs softly that because he saved it, he almost got himself killed, blaming himself that it was all his fault now. He thinks quietly that earlier that day, during a dangerous battle in the dungeon, he had picked up a yellow lizard on impulse, saving its life in a completely pointless act. The thought leaves him dumbfounded at his own foolishness. He mutters bitterly whether telling a lie to himself would at least satisfy his empty stomach. The little lizard makes a faint noise, coo almost as if responding to him. Alva lets out a dry laugh and tells it that he is not going to eat it, that it shouldn't make such pitiful sounds. He insists he would never do something like that, not after going through all that trouble to save it. Pulling the thin, tattered blanket closer, he sighs that it's time to sleep, calling the ragged cloth his cold futon. The lizard chirps again, and Alva nods faintly, telling it that it has done well. He leans back against the stone wall, trying to close his eyes. But sleep does not come. Pain throbs endlessly in his left arm, and he curses under his breath that the ache will not stop. He knows the reason the minotaur had stomped on it. There must be a crack in the bone, and he realizes that the next battle will be rough. Then all at once, a soft warmth spreads across the wound. The lizard has climbed up and is gently blowing on his arm. The pain fades instantly. Alva stares, stunned. He wonders aloud what just happened, that this lizard somehow did that. His thoughts race as he recalls that only humans or monsters should be able to use magic. But monsters, by their nature, never cast healing spells on humans. They never grow attached, and they would never aid a person. Yet this tiny creature chirps softly again, looking up at him. Alva stares at it in disbelief and asks what it truly is, what in the world this little being could be. Days later, the dungeon resounds with another terrifying noise. A massive stone golem looms over the trembling slaves, its every step shaking the earth beneath their feet. They cry out in fear, marveling at its destructive power. Some collapse simply from the shockwaves of its attacks. Panic spreads as they scream that this must be the end even for Alva. Yet, as always, Alva stands alone before the towering creature. He thinks back to the yellow lizard he picked up days ago, that strange being that used magic despite not being human. Monsters never bond with people, so what was it? What could exist between human and monster? He cannot find the answer even as he charges forward. His blade strikes true, cutting deep through the golem's core. The creature splits apart with a thunderous crack. Alva breathes heavily, muttering that he still doesn't know what that lizard truly is. Around him, the surviving slaves whisper in awe that Alva has won again. But Alva barely hears them, his mind dazed as he looks at the shattered golem before him. He curses himself for spacing out, realizing the fight isn't over yet. One of the slaves shouts, asking what it would even take to kill such a monster, but the golem has already gone still. Alva focuses again, thinking that at the very least, he should not let his mind wander during a fight. He orders the others to peel off the materials, their value clear even in their exhaustion. Then behind him, a shadow moves. Another slave, holding a dagger, approaches silently. Alva senses it, thinking bitterly that lowering his guard after a battle is a fool's mistake. The man lunges, but Alva reacts instantly, punching him hard enough to send him sprawling. He looks down and says that he understands now the attacker must have been ordered by the Lord. If he killed Alva, he would be freed from slavery. Alva's voice grows quiet as he adds that he has been betrayed too many times before, so he knows the man is not truly evil. He thinks grimly that the Lord, the people of the city, even the other slaves, none of them are on his side. In truth, they are all his enemies. He cannot ask anyone for help. Around him, others work to strip the golem's remains, muttering that the ore from its body will fetch a high price. Alva tells them to strip it quickly, but in his mind he repeats that he must never trust anyone. Back in the city, inside the Lord's office, an assistant enters hurriedly and announces that the slave explorers have returned safely. The Lord waves dismissively, saying he already knows. Around the streets, people gossip restlessly that Alva has survived again, their dissatisfaction bubbling close to violence. The Lord, listening to the distant murmurs, declares coldly that they must act immediately. He says divine punishment must finally fall upon Alva, that the criminal's son should die once and for all. In his cell once again, Alva sits quietly. The lizard crawls near his hand and he glances down, asking if it is still here. He wonders silently why he even saved it in the first place. He mutters that now that it's free, it should go out into the wide world. Yet as he thinks, he remembers his own conclusion from before that humans always betray. Even this lizard, small and fragile, probably would not. He laughs faintly at his own thoughts, realizing what a misanthrope he has become. He confesses to himself that he no longer expects anything from humans or even from animals. But there is still one person he wants to meet: his father, the man who caused everything. He thinks of him with a tightening chest. Why did his father attack the city? What kind of man was he? Why did Alva have to suffer like this because of him? He admits that he may never leave this prison alive, but if he has one regret, it is that he will die without ever knowing those answers. The lizard climbs closer and blows softly across his hand again. The warmth spreads and the ache in his wounds vanishes once more. Alva watches in astonishment, realizing that the creature heals him every time. He thanks it softly, saying that thanks to it, he has almost fully recovered. He thinks to himself that the being is strange, but undeniably beneficial to him. At the very least, it eases one of his many burdens. He looks at it again and decides it deserves a name. He tells the little creature that its way of chirping is unusual coo, he decides, saying that from today onward that will be its name. He adds that it is not a bad one, and the lizard chirps again, as if understanding. Sometime later, Alva sits with a piece of bread in his hand, the first he has received in days. Ku rests on his shoulder. Alva remarks that it seems the guards do not intend to kill him, yet starvation must simply be their way of breaking him. He breaks the bread in half, saying that even a quarter of it will probably last Ku a week. He holds it up to the lizard's mouth, and Ku eats happily, chirping with delight. Watching it, Alva thinks quietly that this strange creature has become his new roommate, the only one to share his cell after his long days as a dungeon slave. It is an odd feeling, he realizes. The creature is not a parent, not a sibling, not even human. Yet perhaps that is why its presence feels comforting. When Ku is there, he feels a sense of relief that he has not known in years. He does not expect anything from Ku's magic. He does not seek any gain. It is enough just to have it beside him. That night, he lies down beneath the tattered blanket, Ku nestled close beneath the folds. His thoughts drift as he feels the tiny warmth against his chest. He realizes at last that this feeling, this small, steady comfort, is something he has never once known before. He understands now that this is what it feels like to have a friend. Yet those gentle days do not last long. The next morning, the battle begins again. Outside the dungeon, the Lord arrives with his army. He greets Alva mockingly, saying it has been a long time since his last failure. Alva, holding his sword, replies that it is rare for the Lord himself to come all the way to the dungeon entrance. The Lord smirks and says that, of course, he wanted to witness Alva's final moments with his own eyes. He orders his men to do it. The assistant steps forward, unleashing a surge of lightning from a magic orb. The electric shock courses through Alva's body, paralyzing him. Guards move in, their faces expressionless as one drives a sword into his leg. Alva grits his teeth, cursing that they caught him while his collar's magic left him immobile. He realizes too late that the spear used on him was coated with poison. His strength fades rapidly. He understands the Lord's cruelty now. If a master directly punishes an innocent slave, the magic's backlash would strike him as well. So the Lord simply sacrifices his men to do it in his place. The Lord declares coldly that today will be the day Alva dies, and with a gesture, he orders the dungeon raid to begin. The dungeon's path itself poses little trouble even with his wounded leg. Alva can still move, but he knows the true problem lies deeper. Inside, the air trembles as a voice echoes through the dungeon walls. The announcer declares that tonight's event is a special one, a live show for the townspeople using the expensive Crystal of Far Sight. The crowd above cheers, excited to watch. They are told that this night's spectacle is special because the criminal's son will finally die. The announcer proudly introduces the dungeon boss, the Ogre King, and his horde of ogres. He assures the spectators that no matter how strong Alva is, he cannot possibly stand against such overwhelming numbers. The crowd roars as his name is called the criminal's son, the slave Alva, already bleeding from his wounded leg. Alva looks around the vast chamber, his breath ragged. He realizes that this is where he will likely die. The announcer's voice echoes again, declaring that the Ogre King has launched a surprise attack and thus begins the battle. The scene shifts to a loud announcement echoing through the arena, declaring the start of the special night show. The crowd stirs with anticipation, uncertain of what makes this night so special, until the voice continues to explain that a man will face death before their very eyes. The air grows tense as the announcer introduces the event, a brutal contest between the feared Ogre King and his massive horde. Against such overwhelming strength, even the strongest warrior would crumble, and yet here stands Alva, the son of a criminal and a branded slave, chosen as tonight's prey. Alva stares ahead, realizing that this arena may become his grave. The thought settles heavily in his mind, this is where he dies. The announcement continues with growing excitement, declaring that the Ogre King begins his assault without delay, unleashing chaos upon the stage as the night's deadly spectacle begins with a thunderous roar. The battlefield erupts as ogres swarm Alva, their roars shaking the air. Alva struggles to control the assault, attacking the leader of the ogres with precise strikes, thinking that taking out the leader at the start is his only path to victory. Pain shoots through him as an electric shock hits, and he moans but pushes himself to fight back. Realizing the source, he thinks this is the slave collar's electric shock, used even in mind combat, a tactic that puts him at a severe disadvantage. A voice announces that Alva is surrounded by a swarm of ogres, prompting murmurs of anticipation from the audience, eager to see him die. Despite the overwhelming odds, he refuses to yield, declaring that he cannot be underestimated. Another electric shock strikes him, but he endures, struggling against the relentless assault. The announcer voices disbelief at his survival, and Alva contemplates the cost of each shock, realizing it is inflicted through other slaves, their suffering fueling his pain. Suddenly, he notices a soldier holding Ku, the lizard, tied with a rope, and soldier shouts for Alva to watch the creature die. The Lord commands the soldier to act, and the soldier obeys, ready to comply. Alva acts swiftly, cutting the rope and freeing Ku, but the Ogre King strikes, sending him sprawling to the ground, his body scratched and battered. Commentary erupts, noting that Alva has taken a direct hit from the Ogre King, an impact that would have killed most instantly. The audience calls for a finishing blow, while the guards laugh at the sight, mocking the struggle. Even the Lord remarks on the futility of trying to capture the lizard, dismissing it as irrelevant. Alva lies in tatters, his right leg pierced by a poisonous blade, surrounded by dozens of ogres, the cumulative damage from the shocks weighing him down. Thoughts of death swirl in his mind as he acknowledges the inevitability of his fate as a slave. Hunger gnaws at him, but he reflects that even in a life filled with suffering, he has at least saved Ku. Accepting that this may be enough, he closes his eyes, ready to surrender to death. To his astonishment, Ku appears on his chest, speaking to him in a voice he recognizes. Alva is shocked. He cannot believe it is really Ku. The lizard asks if he truly wants to die here, and Alva admits that he has long since given up. Even if he survives by some miracle, death as a slave awaits inevitably. Ku challenges him, asking if he really wants to give up so easily. Anger flares within Alva, and he shouts that being a slave is not easy to mock, that their lives are meaningless and discarded, that betrayal surrounds him, and that he cannot trust anyone, not parents, lords, townspeople, or fellow slaves. He describes the endless cycle of trying and failing, the pain and loneliness, the inevitability of death for no reason, exposing the depth of his despair. Ku responds gently, declaring itself as his ally, promising to remain by his side even if the world abandons him, asking only that he trust it. Alva is left speechless, overwhelmed by the sincerity in Ku's voice. The lizard presses further, urging him to speak his deepest desire. Alva hesitates, feeling the hopelessness of the situation, yet the longing to be heard rises from within him. Through tears, he cries for help, for someone, anyone, to listen, his emotions spilling onto his tattered shirt. Ku, moved by his words, reassures him that they are connected. A golden light emanates from Ku, transforming into a magnificent angel. The pact between them is sealed, and the angel addresses Alva as her master, promising to guide him on the path to the heavens. Shocked, Alva asks if this is truly Ku, and the angel confirms, instructing him to hold out his hand. She invokes spirit magic, astonishing all who witness the scene. In the underground chamber, moonlight pours through the ceiling, illuminating Alva as he recounts the night that changed his world. The angel explains that many spirits like her exist and urges him to gather their power to become a great spirit user, capable of opening the gate of the sky. She pledges herself as his sword, in body and soul, promising to fight by his side. The moonlight bathes them both as Alva, now empowered, shines brightly, the golden radiance reflecting the beginning of a new journey. Alva reels, thinking simply what on earth is going on. Light floods the space as the yellow lizard he saved begins to glow and shift. Before him, the small creature stretches and reshapes into the form of a beautiful young woman. She comes down toward him, and light flows from her hands to heal his wounds. She tells him that the poison in his leg should be fine now. Alva registers the broken slave collar at once, and the thought that this is what she meant by spirit arts presses in his mind, though he does not fully understand it. He notices a necklace of golden pearls around his neck he had not seen before. He looks at her and asks, bewildered, whether she is Ku. She answers with a teasing remark that it should be obvious. When he protests that it is not obvious at all, she leans toward him and says she is joking a spirit's joke. Alva admits he does not understand a word of it. He presses further, demanding to know what a spirit is, why she turned from a lizard into a human, and what she meant by the gate of the sky. She says explanations can come later and points out that although she blasted the monsters away, she only knocked the humans unconscious, for now they must move. Then her shape ripples again and turns into a flying dragon. She tells Alva to climb onto her back and calls him master. Alva shouts in shock at the sight of a dragon and insists he thought she had been a lizard before. She brushes that aside, insists he get on quickly, and lifts him gently with her mouth so he can climb onto her back. Once he is secure, she announces that they will depart and takes to the sky. Alva grips her scales, frightened. The dragon asks if he is all right and warns him not to fall. He replies that falling is not the problem, and he thinks over the day. So much has happened, but two things stand out: the slave collar broke, and for the first time he sees how vast the sky is. Sometime later in a town, Alva and the beautiful young woman appear at the Adventurers' Guild reception. Alva looks large and broad. The receptionist asks whether he is unregistered, and he admits he is. The receptionist explains that unregistered adventurers receive reduced rewards and offers registration for 5,000. Alva says he has no money and only needs to earn today's meal. The receptionist suggests simple tasks such as herb gathering or goblin subjugation. People in the waiting area whisper. One man remarks that the big ragged fellow looks like someone who has just run away from a slave trader. Another says no, a slave trader would never let someone like that go. They note that the little girl beside him looks refined, like a noble, and find it hard to believe she would be in a small-town guild. Alva senses they stand out whose horns and wings are supposed to be hidden, and he notices a man slipping out of the room. One man goes to his boss and reports with a grin that a fine-looking woman has come by the guild, perfect for slavery. The boss confirms she is new and has no guild card. They laughs and says, "Let's show that girl just how scary newbie hunting id," and the boss calls the gang to work. Wrathful greed move out. In the forest, Alva and the girl are surrounded by the gang. The boss jeers and asks if the girl is ready to lose everything. Alva is eating herbs and asks who these Hardy's guys are. Ku answers that they are the bandits he may have heard about. The boss laughs and says she is about to experience hell, telling her to think of it as an expensive lesson fee. His gang jeers that she was born beautiful and therefore fortunate. Alva murmurs that herbs do not fill the stomach. Ku points out that mugging is a crime, but when it comes to criminals, anything goes. She hints at money and the human greed that supports them. The boss grows angry, draws his weapon, and says the girl needs to be taught a painful lesson. He insults Alva as a slave and tells the girl to pick a better guard in her next life. Ku reacts with annoyance, and the boss orders them to capture the girl and kill the slave. Ku immediately transforms into a dragon and declares that her master is no longer a slave. The gang recoils in shock. Men shout that monsters do not get attached to humans and cannot take human form. Some call her a spirit and speculate that Alva must be a spirit user. The dragon lashes out with her tail and attacks the bandits. One voice murmurs disbelief at the appearance of a legendary spirit. The boss tells his men that although they cannot handle a spirit, the spirit user is only human, kill him. And they move forward, but Alva kicks strongly all of them. As the gang closes in, Alva pleads, insisting the herbs are precious food and begging them not to steal or destroy them because he is starving. Some of the men scoff that he is insane. Then Ku transforms back to human form with a flash of spirit art. Ropes of light bind the bandits and she collects their golden trinkets. Alva remarks that it is tough luck to have to fight a dragon, and the bound boss snarls in response. Ku steps forward and demands the location of their hideout, warning them not to underestimate a dragon's obsession with treasure as a small flame flickers from her eyes. After a while, she returns with gold and jewels and suggests storming the hideout right away. She urges Alva to toss his herbs aside so they can move, but he replies that before deciding what to do next, there is something he wants to ask. He turns to the boss and asks plainly what a spirit user is exactly. The boss begins to explain that spirits are beings in a class entirely their own. Some say they are the incarnations of nature itself, while others claim they are masses of immense power. There are also those who believe spirits are the very life that once created the world and will someday bring its end. Many such legends and tales continue to circulate, yet not a single one of them is known for certain. He continues, saying that, to put it simply, spirits are among the strongest life forms that exist. Because so few are ever seen, many people assume they are merely rumors or myths. He mentions that spirit arts, a power unique only to spirits, hold secrets to their settlement, mysteries that ordinary magic cannot even come close to matching. Even when a person forms a contract with one, a visible proof of that bond appears. He glances at Alva and points out that the necklace around his neck seems to be such a proof. Alva recalls that the necklace had just appeared one day without explanation. Hearing this, the boss suddenly pauses and questions why a spirit user would be asking him about spirits in the first place. Alva answers that whenever he asks Ku about them, she always tells him to direct the question elsewhere. Ku protests, saying that is not true, it is simply that food and lodging take priority over explanations. She adds that her master was at a level where he would have starved long ago if she had not intervened. Alva, irritated, leans toward the boss, kicks him in the face, and accuses him of knowing far too much. He asks if the dragon that can transform into human form is also a spirit. The boss, ignoring the kick, replies that on top of that, Alva himself is a spirit user, something so rare that only one or two are rumored to exist in each major nation. Alva reminds him that, despite claiming many people think spirits are only legends, the boss has been spouting deep knowledge about them during their battle. He demands to know how the boss learned all that and where he obtained such information. The boss only smirks and says that the answer to that is something Alva will regret capturing them for. Alva laughs at his words and mocks him, saying he has some nerve, calling him a damn fool. Later that night, they sit together in a restaurant for dinner. After taking a single bite, Alva suddenly shouts in disbelief, wondering aloud what kind of food this is and how something so delicious could exist in the world. He declares that he could eat it forever. People sitting nearby glance toward him, whispering among themselves about why that guy is getting so excited over an ordinary meal. Alva, lost in delight, exclaims that he is so glad to be alive. The chef, hearing the commotion, asks what is wrong with him. Ku replies that Alva simply had a rather unique upbringing. Alva continues eating, declaring that it is so good he might die from happiness, calling the meal a paradise, a peaceful paradise. He eats with great excitement, saying that this must be the kind of food nobles get to enjoy. Ku reminds him that she keeps telling him it is just a regular dinner, but she insists that this is treasure, the power of money. He announces dramatically that he is drowning in that very power. The chef sighs and comments that Alva is dramatic about everything. Then the chef informs them that they are out of ingredients and tells them to go ahead and use the bath. Alva is startled by this and repeats the word bath with disbelief. He says he has only ever heard of such a thing in rumors and asks if the legendary entity known as a bath truly exists here. Ku replies that for her master, baths and spirits are both equally rare. In the bathing room, Alva sinks into the hot water and feels warmth spread through his body. He thinks to himself that he never knew soaking in hot water could feel so good. Then he hears someone stepping closer. Ku's voice calls out to him, asking if she should wash his back. Alva, surprised, asks why she is in there with him. Ku explains that even the best inn in this town could not manage to have two separate baths. He admits that he does not really understand, but tells her to go ahead. Ku, inspecting his back, comments that considering the hardness of his body and the years of dried filth, a normal towel would not be enough. She says she borrowed a steel wool scrubber instead. When she begins scrubbing, Alva screams in pain. Ku remarks that if he were a normal human, his skin would have been completely peeled off, but as expected of him, only the dirt comes away. Alva groans and asks if she holds some kind of grudge against him. Afterward, as he relaxes again in the hot water, he admits that he thought he was going to lose his skin. Ku tells him that a huge amount of dirt really did come off, but thanks to that, he is now sparkling clean. Alva leans back, saying that still, the legendary entity he had only ever heard of in rumors, the bath feels heavenly. He wonders aloud if he has actually died and gone to heaven. Ku replies that he has not, reminding him once again that it is just an inn. Alva laughs softly and says that in a single day, his values and common sense have been drastically rewritten. He admits that he does not think he can ever go back to his old life as a slave. Ku looks at him and assures him that he will not return to being a slave anymore, because what he is feeling now is the power of treasure and money. Alva smiles brightly and agrees, saying that treasure truly is incredible. Ku then comes closer and asks whether her master really feels nothing, even though a half-naked woman is right beside him. Alva replies that he does not understand what she means. Ku sighs and calls him a heartless combat golem. He tells her that anyway, having moments like this just to relax and feel safe is the best. There is no threat to his life, and that feels like luxury enough. Ku quietly agrees, saying it really and truly is. Later in the bedroom, Alva enters and brightens immediately at the sight of the beds. He marvels that this is the thing he had only ever heard of in rumors. Ku teasingly asks if, for him, a bed is also something legendary. He says no, but adds that he wonders whether a bed is really that great since he can sleep anywhere, and he is not even conscious while doing it. Yet as he lies down, his body begins to sink into the mattress. He feels his whole form being wrapped in softness and shouts internally how something could be this comfortable. Ku watches him and says she is glad he seems satisfied. Then she climbs into bed beside him, laying her head on his arm. Alva looks at her, surprised. She notices and asks what is wrong. He tells her that her bed is supposed to be the one next to his. Ku replies that it is simply a habit from when she was small. Alva remembers that they used to sleep together back when she was a lizard. Ku silently corrects him in her thoughts, thinking that she was not a lizard but a small dragon. Alva sighs and tells her to just get in the other bed. She asks if he really does not want to sleep together. He explains that he has a major distrust of people and actually feels safer when she is in her lizard form. Ku comments that his emotional scars run deep. Alva nods and repeats that, for that reason, separate beds are better. Suddenly, Ku gets up sharply and declares that she senses a suspicious presence. Through the window, they both notice two soldiers outside, apparently searching for something even at this late hour. Alva looks closer and recognizes the crest on their backs. It belongs to the lord who once enslaved him. Ku asks if they are trying to capture him again. Alva concludes that they are probably scouts and that an army will arrive later. Ku asks if they should run, but Alva shakes his head and says no. Ku tells him that she is going to settle this here. He answers that he wants to settle it himself. She agrees, saying she will go with him. This is not a trade, she adds, but once he has settled this score from his past, she asks if he will listen to what she has to say about the spirits. Alva replies that it is about time and turns back to face her. He declares that he will put an end to his life as a slave and move forward. Ku gazes at him warmly and says that to help him do that, she will tell him about the power known as the strongest in the world, how to use spirit arts. On the battlefield, the Lord stands before his soldiers and commands them to raise the flag and ready their spears. He tells them that though there is only one enemy, they must not let their guard down. That single opponent, he declares, is the child of a demon, the sworn enemy of their homeland, and under no circumstances must he be allowed to return alive. The Lord shouts that this is a battle upon which their pride is staked, a battle of 2,000 men against one. One of the soldiers reports that they have caught up, and the Lord replies with satisfaction that it is only natural. On human feet, he says, no one can travel too far. Lord admits he does not know how the slave managed to remove his collar, but insists that there is no escape for him now. He orders all forces to prepare for the charge, reminding them that the enemy is the son of a criminal who cowardly fled the city. The man must pay for his defiance. The Lord commands them to chase him into the ends of hell and to display his head as proof of victory. Ku, standing beside Alva, observes the vast army and comments with a teasing tone that so many humans have gathered it seems her master is quite popular. Alva replies dryly that this is not the kind of popularity he ever wanted. Ku tilts her head and says that humans are puzzling creatures, wondering aloud what they could possibly gain by killing her master in this situation. Alva answers that it is probably called pride, though he admits he does not really understand. In his mind, he reflects that they are now facing the army of the very city where he had once been enslaved. They could have escaped, but they chose not to. He wanted to settle things to say goodbye to the version of himself who was once a slave. Ku glances at the advancing soldiers and remarks that it looks like none of them have noticed her spirit yet. She adds that against a spirit, 2,000 soldiers are far too few. Alva thinks to himself that spirits are treated like urban legends after all. He remembers that when Ku first took her human form, she had wiped out an entire army in an instant. Ku suggests that maybe she should have made a flashier entrance this time, but Alva quickly tells her not to. Ku, however, insists that even so, the situation is clear. Against a spirit, 2,000 men are too few, but against humans, it is still a formidable threat. She advises her master to steady his heart. Alva looks across the field at the enemy formation and quietly mutters the number 2,000. Ku asks if he is afraid, but he answers that he is not. She says that is disappointing. The Lord then raises his arm and gives the order for his soldiers to advance. Alva watches as the army begins its charge, 2,000 men rushing forward across the open field. On the other side, Alva stands alone, facing them all. A few days earlier, Ku had spoken to Alva about the coming battle. She had told him that before ever standing against an army, even a dragon would understand the need for preparation. She had said she would give him a lecture on spirit arts. She had noticed his lack of enthusiasm and asked if he could at least sound interested. Alva had replied that it was just mood whiplash from earlier, but in his heart, He had thought about the words she had used the world's strongest power, spirit arts, and how to use them. Ku had begun explaining, saying that first come the basics. One of the reasons spirits are called the strongest beings is because of spirit arts, their unique power. Alva had asked if that was the same fierce blow that had freed him from slavery, and she had laughed, confirming it. She had gone on to explain that spirits build and store a special energy called spirit energy, which they use to perform spirit arts. As she held out her hand, a faint glow had shimmered between her fingers. She had said that the same applies to a spirit user, a human who draws spirit energy through their contracted spirit. Taking Alva's hand, she had demonstrated how it works. Golden light had begun to evaporate from his palm, flickering like mist. She had told him that in battle, a spirit user has three main roles. First, to empower the spirit with mana. Second, to control both mana and spirit energy. And third, to support the fight with spirit arts. She had explained that humans generate mana while spirits generate spirit energy, but told him to forget about the first two for now. Alva had asked if that was really all right, and Ku had assured him it was. Against human armies, she had said, spirit arts alone are enough. The first two techniques are mainly for fighting other spirits, so there was no need to worry about them. For this battle, he would simply use spirit arts to crush the enemy army. Alva had nodded in understanding and said that this army would serve as practice for his spirit art. Ku had smiled and told him that was right. A single explosion of light, she had said, could wipe out about 1,000 soldiers. With her current ability, one blast should annihilate them all. The real key, however, would be how quickly she could unleash a second blast. That would decide the outcome of the battle. If the spell was delayed, the enemy could catch up and put him in grave danger. She had warned him to stay sharp and prepare himself. Back in the battlefield, the army reaches Alva's position. He focuses, attempting to activate the spirit art. He adjusts the spell, thinking he will switch it to non-lethal mode for the first shot. A moment later, an explosion of light tears through the enemy ranks. The ground shakes as a blinding wave of golden energy spreads across the battlefield. The Lord shouts furiously as his formation collapses. Alva looks around, startled by the power he unleashed. He mutters in disbelief, wondering what just happened. Ku narrows her eyes, realizing that she had underestimated him. When Alva turns back and asks about the second shot, she silently reflects that when a spirit user employs spirit arts, they mix spirit energy with mana, but Alva's mana had far surpassed her expectations. His hellish days as a slave had forged within him a terrifying power, far beyond anything she could have imagined. Alva approaches the Lord, who is now crawling on the ground, trembling in fear. Alva asks if it is all right for him to take care of him now, addressing him mockingly as "my lord." The terrified man tells him to stay away. Alva looks down at him and says, almost sadly, that it is disappointing. For more than 6 years, they had hated each other, bound together by chains of resentment. But now, the shackles are gone. He says that if the Lord had truly wanted to kill him, even without Ku's power, he would have needed 5 times more soldiers, an army of 10,000. The Lord continues to tremble as Alva turns away. He tells Ku that it is time to go. Ku asks if it is all right to leave, and Alva answers that it is over. He says they will never meet again, nor ever speak again. Together, they turn their backs on the battlefield and begin to walk away. As they leave, a new presence appears. A girl in a black dress materializes before them, standing in their path. She congratulates him, saying that he has done well. Alva turns toward her and asks who she is. The girl introduces herself as Anshira, explaining that her name alone will not tell him much. She says that she is an administrator, sent by the Order of Order itself. She has come to take them with her, and she identifies Ku by name, calling her the user of forbidden arts. Ku asks if Anshira is there to collect her. Anshira announces that she knows of forbidden arts, and the words render Alva speechless while Ku flares with fury. Ku snaps that Anshira must be the lawkeeper of the bonfire organization and Scylla. Alva reels, thinking he has no idea what is happening, the one who manages forbidden arts, the bonfire organization. He cannot follow their talk and watches Ku, realizing she has no time to explain. Ku insists this is strange. There should already have been, she says, over a month since the scheduled execution for the forbidden art. Anshira interrupts, arguing that Ku's contract with that man over there caused his spirit power to return rapidly, and that it has now become more than enough to warrant punishment. Alva remembers how, when Ku first shifted from lizard into human, his power returned. and he asks in his head if she means that changing from lizard to humanoid form triggered it. Ku, while clenching a fist, says she has never heard of a case like this. Ku pleads for 10 minutes, begging for time to explain to her master. She says her master has just settled his personal matters and asks Anshira to let her tell the spirit's story. Alva thinks that is fine. He had been about to hear Ku's story anyway, and he looks at Anshira, irritated that this intruder has shown up. Anshira replies that she cannot grant a violator's request. The established order demands immediate transport. Ku protests that this is one-sided. A man with horse body begin to move. He strikes Ku across the face hard enough to stagger her. Alva steps forward and grabs her. The centaurus demands to know what Alva is misunderstanding and claims that what he has are not rights. Alva replies that he is only doing his duty. Ku presses her hand to her cheek where she was struck and lowers her voice, but Centaurus sneers that she is not an existence that chooses for herself. Alva lunges, fists clenched, shouting angrily at them all. He accuses them of spouting nonsense and leaving him completely in the dark, and then resorting to violence on top of it. That man dismounts and snarls, challenging him to pick a fight, boasting that as a spirit he could snap a human neck in an instant. He leans forward and warns Alva to know his place. Anshira cuts in sharply, telling the man that he is the one who needs to know his place. She cites a number 4053 and orders him to stand down, commanding the man with horse body to follow suit. She faces Alva, who suddenly wonders if he has been standing out too much. As she opens a transport, Anshira asks Ku whether she will come alone or bring her contractor along for the ride. Ku moves and says she cannot drag her master, a man who knows nothing of the situation, into this. She insists she will go alone. Alva grabs her hand and refuses to let her go. Ku thanks him briefly, calling the time they had together short but meaningful. Then all three vanish. Alva is left alone, shouting in frustration about what on earth just happened. He spends the entire day afterward searching aimlessly for Ku. He crosses several mountains and asks around in many villages and towns, but cannot find a single clue. One night, exhausted, he returns to the same inn where he first met Ku. Sitting at the table, he thinks gloomily that he is back where he started with no progress at all. He cannot understand what happened back there, nor does he know what to do or what questions to ask. As he broods, someone brings food and apologizes for the wait. Alva wonders again why, and his mind drifts back to the night he dined with Ku. The same meal now tastes a bit bland in comparison. A girl sitting behind him notices his long face and asks what is wrong. He turns and snaps that if she is only here to mess with him, she should leave. She sits with arms crossed and calls him an insolent brat, especially for a total rookie spirit user. She asks whether he does not want to save his contracted spirits, and then steps forward. Alva asks if she knows something. The girl smiles and introduces herself as Juris, saying she is a spirit who shares the same goal as he does. Julith introduces herself calmly, stating that her name is Julith and that she is a spirit who shares the same goal as Alva. He reacts in surprise, wondering aloud if she truly means they both wish to save Ku. She sighs softly and points out that it is rather rude of him to name her little sister Ku without permission, explaining that the girl already bears that name. His eyes widen as he repeats her words, asking uncertainly if she truly means that Ku is her little sister. The thought flashes through his mind that Ku was the name he himself had given her, so he wonders if that means her family has appeared. Julith quickly clarifies that it is not like they are related by blood. She admits that her family showing up would be the last thing she ever expected, but she is basically Ku's older sister in spirit. Alva stares at her blankly, thinking in confusion about what exactly this girl means. Julith suddenly raises her voice, insisting that she is that girl's big sister figure, though not real family. They come from the same hometown, which makes her practically Ku's sister. She tells him to try and understand it already, explaining that with the lingering traces of Ku's spiritual power, finding her is easy, and that is how strong their sisterly bond is. She leans forward and demands if he gets it now. Alva watches her with quiet astonishment, thinking privately what kind of girl this Julith really is. Then she stands abruptly, placing her hands on the table with determination. She says that both of them want to save the same girl and that their goals align, nothing else matters. Alva crosses his arms, considering her words, and admits he has no objections. Julith nods, her tone turning firm. She says there is not much time, so she will keep it short. She begins to explain that Ku has to face a punishment for reasons she does not fully reveal. Alva reacts sharply, asking if this punishment is related to what Anshira had called a forbidden art. Julith raises an eyebrow and says that he already knows that much, confirming that he is right, but adds that the content of the punishment is far more important than the forbidden art itself. She continues, her expression grave, explaining that Ku is in an actual crisis. Alva looks at her, stunned, but she does not pause. She tells him that spirits are considered the strongest life forms in this world, legendary beings of which only a few exist. Yet, she explains, the common belief about them is wrong. He tilts his head slightly, murmuring a thoughtful sound, and she begins to elaborate. Julith describes a place known as the Spirit Labyrinth, also called the Gate of the Void, where spirits dwell. It is, she says, like a massive dungeon swarming with countless of the world's strongest spirits concentrated in one place. Alva repeats the name quietly in his mind, the Spirit Labyrinth, and she continues, revealing that Ku has been thrown into that very place. Currently, Ku is weakened from the backlash of the forbidden art, and because of the punishment imposed upon her, the dungeon itself has become even harsher than normal. To put it bluntly, Julith says, Ku's situation is utterly hopeless. For a long moment, silence fills the room. Then Julith looks directly at him and speaks with serious conviction. She tells him that if he intends to save Ku and continue getting involved with her, he will inevitably be dragged into even greater hardships. Therefore, she asks him directly if he still wants to save Ku despite all of this, whether he has the resolve to challenge the labyrinth of his own free will. Alva does not respond at first. The silence stretches, heavy with thought, until he suddenly slams his hand against the table. Julith blinks in surprise, but he speaks with firm resolve, declaring that he was not hesitating, only surprised, because he has never truly chosen anything before in his life. He states that he will save Ku of his own will. He rises from his seat, his hand still pressed to the table, and says that even if the path ahead leads to hell, he will be proud to walk it as long as it is the hell he chose himself. Julith looks at him with wide eyes, startled by his sudden conviction. Slowly, her surprise fades into a faint smile, and she asks if that means he will cooperate with her. He nods firmly in agreement. She straightens her posture, satisfied, and says that now everything is ready. Without hesitation, she raises her voice and shouts for Anshira to come out, saying she knows Anshira has been listening the whole time. From behind them, Anshira speaks in her calm, composed tone, warning Julith not to shout so loudly or she will disturb the other guests. Alva turns toward her, bewildered, thinking in disbelief that she was not there a moment ago. Julith quickly tells Anshira that they have fulfilled all the conditions she had set, and demands that she now take them to Ku. Anshira takes another sip of tea and replies that it is true since Julith has joined forces with Alva, who holds the contract with Ku. All the requirements have indeed been met. Julith immediately insists that they go right away, but Anshira holds up a hand and remarks that there is still something Julith needs to do first. Julith blinks in confusion, asking what that could possibly be, and Anshira simply gestures toward the table, pointing at the remaining food. She reminds Julith that there is still food left, and that wasting it would be unacceptable. Julith stares at her in disbelief, protesting that such things hardly matter right now. Alva, meanwhile, finishes his meal quietly as Julith scolds Anshira not to choke on her food. Once finished, Alva steps forward with determination, telling Anshira that it is finally time to fulfill her promise and take them to Ku. Anshira nods, raises her glowing finger, and with a soft shimmer of magic, the space around them distorts. In the next instant, they find themselves standing in another realm entirely. Dark, jagged walls rise around them, glittering with glowing crystals and drifting sparkles that illuminate the vast expanse. Both Alva and Julith stare in awe at the new surroundings. Julith starts to ask what this place is, but before she can finish, Anshira steps forward with quiet authority and declares that they have arrived, welcoming them to the Spirit Labyrinth. Magical and sparkling butterflies flutter through the air as the dungeon unfolds before them, covered with radiant crystals stretching far into the distance. Anshira tells them that this is the place where any wish can come true, the place where miracles of every kind occur. She urges them to reach for it for power, honor, wealth, even ambition so grand that all else seems trivial, and welcomes them again to the Spirit Labyrinth. Alva looks at her curiously, while Anshira continues to explain that this is a special dungeon reserved only for transgressors, the Path of Atonement itself. She asks if she even needs to explain any further, but Julith, impatient, shouts that there is no need and insists she be allowed to move ahead already. Alva, however, mutters in confusion, saying that he would actually like an explanation, and adds that she should at least explain while they move. Julith sighs and says she will explain while they run, telling him to bear with it for now, and he nods in agreement. And Shira tells them to try and get along, warning that they do not want to die so easily, and then says that they should take their time. With that, she disappears, leaving Alva staring in surprise as he mutters that she is gone. Julith quickly responds that they do not have time to waste and tells him to hurry. They start running together, and Alva asks what their main goal is. Julith answers that they must break through the 10th floor of the labyrinth, but before that, they need to catch up to Ku, which means there is something they must do first. She tells him to take her hand. Alva looks at her hand and asks if she is worried he will get lost, wondering if she is bad with directions or something. Julith snaps that of course not and calls him an idiot, telling him to just give her his hand already. He sighs and agrees. When they hold hands, light begins to radiate from their bodies, a strength bestowed upon them both. Alva notices a glowing pendant hanging from his neck and stares silently at it in surprise. Julith congratulates him, explaining that it means his second spirit contract has been formed. Holding the necklace, Alva wonders aloud what the pendant even is, saying it appeared when he contracted with Ku. Julith, clearly annoyed, says that he does not even know that and tells him there is no time for a long explanation. Soon they reach the first floor of the labyrinth. Ahead of them stand enormous crystal golems. Alva stares at the towering figures and asks what they are, wondering if those creatures are also spirits. Julith explains that through the spirit contract he has gained her power. Light begins to shimmer from her hand as she steps forward and says that this is the power of a spirit. A weapon materializes in her grip, engulfed in flame. She thrusts it forward with force, striking the crystal surface before her. She tells Alva to learn how to use the power that is the duty of a spirit user. She asks if he understands, and he quickly responds that he does. By the time they reach the second floor, another spirit appears, Blade Leon. Alva, determined, says that since she has shown off, it is now his turn to step up. Julith looks at him and calls him an idiot, but mana begins to surge from Blade Leon's horns, and Alva watches, astonished. Suddenly, Julith rushes to his side, pulling him back. She tells him that spirit users stay in the rear and must not charge forward. He looks confused, and she explains that the ones who fight spirits are spirits like her. She chants the words spirit art, whirling flame adamant, and her weapon blazes with fiery energy as she attacks Blade Leon. She explains that this is the basic rule of spirit battles. Spirits are overwhelmingly stronger than humans, and a spirit user's job is to let their spirit protect them. She tells him to relax. Yet inwardly, she notices something strange. Before she could even shield him, he had already dodged the attack on his own, as if he had actually reacted to a spirit's movement. She wonders in disbelief if that could even be possible. Meanwhile, Alva folds his arms and says that if spirits do all the fighting, doesn't that just make humans nothing but dead weight? Julith answers that it is not exactly like that, telling him to keep running. As they move forward again, she asks if Ku had ever told him anything about the role of spirit users. Alva recalls her words: number 1, strengthen the spirit with mana; number 2, control mana and spiritual power; and number 3, support battles with speed arts. He nods and says that yes, she did tell him that. Julith says exactly, and that right now, what matters most is the first rule. Alva repeats the words to himself: strengthen spirits with mana. Julith explains that spirits can use spiritual power for their arts, but the reverse is also true: they cannot generate mana. Spirits are beings composed of spiritual power, while humans possess mana. As they run deeper into the dungeon, she continues to explain that when those two forces combine, they unleash far greater strength. Alva realizes that this is why spirits need contracts with humans to obtain mana. Julith smiles, kicks a spirit-horned Maul aside, and says that it is time to put that theory to the test. He looks startled, but she tells him that since they have formed a contract, a spiritual link now exists between them. She instructs him to sense that connection, control it, and channel his mana into her to strengthen her. Ahead of them, another spirit appears, a massive metal crystal golem. Alva stares and says in disbelief that they are fighting one right off the bat. Julith warns him that this one is tougher than before and tells him to match his attacks with hers. Alva thrusts both hands forward as mana begins to pour from his palms. He curses under his breath, struggling to control it, while Julith charges ahead with her blazing weapon. She calls out her art again, spirit adamant flame, and strikes the golem head-on. But as she fights, she notices the energy flowing from Alva's hands toward the enemy. The raw mana seems unstable but powerful. She looks back in surprise to see him trying to gather and control it, muttering that there's no way he can manage that out of nowhere. Still, with Julith's final strike, the golem shatters into fragments. She lands lightly on one of the broken pieces, glancing back at him with a faint smirk. She tells him that this will be his homework to master that control by the time they reach the 6th floor. Alva wipes the sweat from his forehead, nods firmly, and says he's got it. Julith grits her teeth as they step into the 3rd floor of the Spirit Labyrinth, frustration echoing in her voice as she lets out a cry. She complains that this is so frustrating that she is still nowhere near her full strength. Alva glances at her, noticing the faint shine from the pendant around his neck, and asks if she is not feeling well. But before he can say more, a fanged grasshopper leaps nearby. Julith replies that it is not that. She too is weakened from using forbidden art, just like Ku. She reminds him that Anshira mentioned it earlier. This dungeon is a special one for violators, the path of sin. Both she and Ku committed a violation by using forbidden arts, and that is why they are suffering this punishment. On top of their weakened state, the difficulty here is far higher than in a normal dungeon. Alva listens carefully and replies that he sees, but Julith quickly adds that he should not get the wrong idea. Ku only used the forbidden art because she had to protect everyone, not for selfish reasons. She leaps into action against a chameleon frog spirit and says that what they need right now is power, that a spirit master's reinforcement is essential, and that she is counting on him. After a short pause, Alva nods and replies with determination that he understands. When they finally reach the 5th floor, Alva stops, astonished by the sight before him. A small pool of water lies surrounded by smooth stones, with a glowing fountain-like pillar at its center. Colorful crystals scatter across the area, illuminating the air in a calm shimmer. He observes the stillness and says that he does not sense any enemies at all. Julith, exhausted and covered in dust, explains that the 5th floor is a safe zone. No enemies appear here, and they can rest for a few hours. She kneels down, studying the ground, and notices faint traces. Her eyes widen slightly as she realizes that Ku rested here. She says that if they push on without stopping, they might be able to catch up. Alva looks at her, concerned, and asks if she is sure she can keep going without rest, pointing out that she looks completely worn out. Julith explains that she told him before Ku used the forbidden art to protect herself, and that power was extremely strong. The backlash, she says, was devastating. Ku must be far more weakened than she is. Julith admits that her own forbidden art was only minor compared to what Ku endured. Alva nods and says that is right, remembering how Ku had been in the form of a lizard when he first met her. Julith tells him that exactly Ku's situation is much more critical than hers, and beyond that, the greatest trial of the path of sin awaits them on the 10th floor. Alva reacts with surprise, repeating the words 10th floor. Julith explains that yes, the 10th floor holds a special event not found in normal dungeons, a duel against another sinner, arranged by the Kagarabai organization. The enemy in this duel is also a spirit master, and they call it the Purification Duel. She says that Ku is an exceptionally strong spirit, and it is true, but as her big sister, she has to protect her little sister first. Her own problems can wait. She whispers to herself that Ku must hold on, because her big sister is on her way to save her. Alva stays silent, saying nothing, but his thoughts turn inward. He admits to himself that he is also thinking about Ku. Yet with every floor they descend, the enemies grow stronger. Julith pushes herself to keep moving, shouting that the power of a big sister cannot be beaten, though her voice wavers and her steps become unsteady. She is running out of stamina, her breathing heavy, and her spirit energy fluctuates dangerously. They continue pushing forward until they reach the 6th floor. A deep growl echoes through the corridor as a massive spirit bone ogre appears before them, its presence radiating menace. Spirit Art Bone Cannon, holding its weapon, is ready to attack. Julith immediately comes in action and activates her weapon while chanting Guard Skill Diamond Bullet, sending a burst of energy towards the creature. Alva, standing behind her, starts radiating mana from his hands. He thinks to himself that his weakness lies in his inability to use magic. Though he has survived countless life-and-death battles, his combat skills and mana pool are only high for a human. He never had the chance to truly learn magic. He remembers that when he used Ku's spirit arts before, he had only been borrowing her power. He does not yet have the skill to convert his own power into magic. He thinks that he has to figure something out, that he must do something. Suddenly, he notices a movement and shouts for Julith, warning her that something is behind her, and the creature is growling. This is the spirit art known as Slashing Claws, a spirit horned mole bursting joining the fight. Alva stands before her and controls the attack. She calls out Alva's name in shock as blood spills across the floor. Meanwhile, far away, Ku sits on the cold stone floor of the 10th floor of the Spirit Labyrinth, the final trial. Her body trembles as she notices two huge figures standing before her. One is Centaurus while the other is a tall man. Two more golems stand beside them, one with 3 glowing eyes, and the other, a massive crystal metal golem. The battle of the purification duel has begun. The tall man commands to sword Crystal Golem to move. Crystal Golem lunges forward. Ku braces herself as the command echoes. The fight begins. The Crystal Golem attacks with a skill called Strong Slash, but Ku reacts with Spirit Art, Explosive Light Variation. Their powers collide, filling the room with a blinding burst as energy crashes outward. The Crystal Golem weakens, its surface cracking before it falls to the ground with a heavy thud. Ku watches carefully, panting. But the tall man forwards his hand, radiating magic reinforcement. Mana flares from its palm, glowing violently. The energy flows into the fallen crystal golem, reinforcing it, making it larger and stronger. The creature rises again, now charged with intensified power. Ku narrows her eyes, preparing herself. She attacks once more with Spirit Art, bursting orb, aiming at the crystal golem. But the creature counters with another mana-infused skill, String Slash. The impact strikes Ku hard, sending her crashing to the floor. She gasps, trying to rise, her body trembling. She admits to herself that this is really hopeless. Forcing herself to think, she analyzes the situation. The difference between having and not having magic reinforcement is enormous. She realizes that she has to find a way somehow to counter magic reinforcement before it is too late. The 10th floor of the Spirit Labyrinth marks the path of sin, the final trial known as the Purification Duel, a battle against sinners orchestrated by the Bonfire Organization. A spirit hammer lizard looms ahead, ready to attack her. The challengers, all spirit users, are forced into combat where spirits can only reveal their true strength when contracted with humans. The tall man activates mana enhancement, mana evaporating from his hands as it surges to empower the spirit hammer lizard. The atmosphere trembles as the golem unleashes a Spirit Art hammer impact. It becomes clear that clearing this stage with spirits alone is hopeless. She breathes heavily, wiping the sweat from her face, and thinks that this is far too much. If she does not do something about the enemy's mana enchantment soon, she will lose. Looking ahead, she counts 4 enemy spirits, a centaur further back, brutal enough on its own. The tall man's voices resonates as he tells that only one remains. He declares that he has already killed 9 challengers in this duel, and that if he kills her, he will finally be freed. His sins with the wrathful Greed Gang will be absorbed. Standing alone before the towering golems, she asks if the wrathful Greed Gang is not a bandit group from the human world. The tall man responds that this happened long ago and warns her not to lump him together with them. He explains that the spirit users are senior members and that the wrathful Greed Gang operates in both the human and spirit worlds. She realizes then why those bandits had such deep knowledge of spirits and wonders if that could be true. The tall man cuts her thoughts short, saying he has wasted enough words. As he raises his hand, he declares that it is time for her to vanish. The golems begin their assault, and mana evaporates once more from the tall ma's hand. The spirit hammer lizard, empowered by enhancement, attacks with ferocity. A 3-eyed cyclops spirit charges forward with its club. She feels their combined power and thinks how overwhelmingly strong they are. But she moves, activating her Spirit Art explosive light kick, counterattacking with sharp precision. As she strikes, she smiles, thinking that she has figured it out. A spirit user can only maintain mana enhancement on 2 targets at once. If she focuses on the enhancement spirits first, her attacks will penetrate. She resolves to take one down, targeting the spirit hammer lizard first. The Centaurus remains silent as she fights, though within he deems her efforts useless. She attacks the Cyclops, aiming for its eyes, while the centaur spirit murmurs to itself that she has no chance. It reactivates the mana in its hand, while the spirit hammer lizard charges behind her. She quickly activates another technique, Spirit Art, Banku Counter, Explosive Light Reprisal. The spirit hammer lizard is struck, its weapon shattered apart. The force sends Ku tumbling to the ground. Still, she gathers her strength, igniting Spirit Art Explosive Light once again as she tries to hold the lizard's mouth, determined to end it. But the centaur spirit releases Spirit Art Lightning Arrow, launching it at her. The arrow strikes, the impact throwing her to the ground. The tall man announces that one has finally fallen and orders to hurry and finish her off. The three-eyed Cyclops groans as it advances, preparing its weapon for the final blow. Just then, its attack is suddenly dodged by Julith. The sight shocks both the tall man and Ku. Julith remarks casually that Ku looks like she is about to die and says she is glad to have made it in time. Ku's eyes widen even more when she sees Alva standing beside Julith in front of the golems. It has been a day since she last saw him. Alva asks how she has been. In disbelief, she stammers, calling him master and addressing Julith as big sister. She shouts, confused why they are both here. She reminds Alva that he had finally been freed from slavery, that he had just gained his freedom. Julith gently calls her name, Ku-chan, but pauses as Alva speaks. He says that back then, the food had tasted good. Ku freezes as memories flood back shared meals, laughter, warmth. Alva tells her that he only came to invite his friend for a meal, saying that reason alone is enough. Tears stream down Ku's cheeks as she looks at him, astonished and trembling. The tall man interrupts, calling Alva a fool, activating his mana enhancement once more. He asks if a mere human believes he can protect a spirit. The tall man internally scoffs, thinking what a pointless death this will be. Ku cries out to Alva, telling him to quickly use mana enhancement on her. He apologizes, admitting that he never learned how. Ku asks in shock how he became so strong in such a short time. Julith steps forward, telling her it is all right to just watch closely. The tall man activating spirit art/wave. Alva grips his weapon, resting it first on his shoulder, then slamming it down into the ground with immense force. The entire area trembles as mana bursts outward, flooding the battlefield. Both Ku and the crystal sword golem are stunned. After a pause, Alva speaks. He says that the slave collar is gone, and with it, all the curses that bound him: frailty, weakness, slowed speed, exhaustion, blurred vision, reduced mana, poison, phantom pain, bodily debilitation, and even the curse of immunity failure. Nothing remains. He declares that now he is the strongest he has ever been and the freest he has ever felt. Tall man asks if it's really possible for a human to defeat spirit. Alva grips his weapon tighter, the air vibrating with energy, and simply says that they should test it out.